Blockchain Life. And this is my guest, Sam Salgado. And he's getting all set. He's taking off his coat. He's getting ready
Yes,
for
sir.
the interview. So listen, you and I just met literally 5 minutes ago, and I don't care like about that, because I kind of look out and I say, who do I need to know, God, in blockchain? And all of a sudden, I came across your name and I said, would you be on? Tell us a little bit about yourself and when you first started thinking about blockchain.
So I graduated in 2019 with a marketing degree. And I'm 25 right now, but I graduated 23.
Mm.
And I found that, and if anyone in the audience is a millennial or a Gen Zer, they know that it's very hard to find a job. Even in Trump's America, it was extremely difficult for me to find a job.
Mm.
So that first year, I really just bootstrapped everything. Started business and marketing, learned SEO, and just started to, try to make it out here. So
Mm-hmm.
then, fast forward to 2020.
Yep.
April 2020, right during the pandemic, I lost my job. I
Mm.
met my business partner at another job where he was also laid off. And he was the one that introduced me to an article by Bernard Marr called The 7 Trends of 2020. So some of
Ooh.
those trends were preventative medicine and predictive medicine, AI, 5G, and then obviously blockchain. So blockchain really, when I saw it, I just started running with it. I went down the
Yes.
rabbit hole. I started reading books. I took Ivan on Tech Academy. I learned how to become a blockchain developer. I learned all this stuff really before I knew about Bitcoin. I was just running with blockchain
And
development.
tell us why. Why did you get so excited? What were elements?
I think some of the big elements, again, back to this, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
The fact that it's trustless,
Mm.
the fact that there's just a massive opportunity for young people where they cannot find a job in the Web 2.0 community, where it's so easy for people to find a job in the Web 3.0 community. It's easy to find people, and that's so easy, but it's a lot easier. It's easier to find people, and it just was a community. As a researcher myself, because I pride myself as a researcher, that I just found so interesting that there's this platform that has so many use cases that are so
Mm.
untapped. Right now it's 2022 and blockchain is still in its infancy. Well, kind of still in its infancy.
Yes.
The vaccine rollouts were via the IBM blockchain. So it
I
has,
I did not know that.
yes, sir. But the
Wow.
problem is,
Hmm.
and this is why I get to Bitcoin, is that I believe, when I was starting to research all of this stuff and really going in depth on,
Mhm.
blockchain and what cryptocurrencies to utilize and, the difference between, proof of work versus proof of stake. And we found, because for me and my business partner, we really care about, the impoverished communities, the Black community, places in Africa, South America, and those places, they thrive more off of Bitcoin than they do off of Ethereum. Granted, you see people getting developer jobs in Ethereum, but Bitcoin has the potential to really revolutionize nations, and it already has, with El Salvador. And you're also seeing, granted, it's not official, but you're seeing Italy. They just came out to, I think, yesterday with I think their national bank is accepting Bitcoin. Uh,
Wow.
I'm gonna look up the article right now,
Okay.
just so that,
No. You want to be quoted right. I hear you.
exactly.
So my audience, not everybody, but a lot of my audience is brand new to this space, and I feel like it's my role to bring them along into this new world. So you said a few words that I want them to define,
Yes, sir.
because some of them might not know what it means. You said proof of stake. You said proof of work. Can you give us just a little example of that?
Yes, sir. So proof of work is, and I'm actually looking at my PowerPoint right now.
Oh yeah,
Proof of
go for
work
it.
it's basically verification, right? So on the blockchain, what makes it trustless, if you go to a bank, for example, right, and you put $100 in the bank, you have a teller who verifies that,
Yes.
right? If you go with a blockchain, the proof of work or the proof of stake system is the verification.
Yes.
So because it is centralized, meaning there's no central body overseeing it, there has to be a proof of work algorithm that enables validity of transactions.
Yes.
So the proof of work system scans each transaction and authenticates it. Proof of work is essentially one computer, one vote, making it incorruptible. Then you have proof of stake. Now, proof of stake is what a lot of other coins are doing. Things like, I don't know if your audience is familiar with NFTs. They probably are.
Yes.
Ethereum, and any EVMs. Proof of stake is basically a system in which you can have these validators put money into the system, and the money into the system is what gives them the authority almost over the chain.
Gotcha.
And I actually wrote an article on LinkedIn. I'm pulling up this article right now.
Oh yeah, bring it up, man. And again,
about
this is a great topic, and I don't mind you using notes at all because I've done a lot of study myself, and it's so deep that every day I learn something new.
Oh, 100%. So proof of stake is basically you have validating capacity depends on the stake in the network.
Okay.
So let's say I stake $100 million onto the network. Now the validating capacity will depend on that stake versus proof of work, where the mining capacity depends on the computational power. That's why you have to solve these computer problems in a proof of work system in order to verify transactions.
So for people that again, this is good, man. So for people who are brand new to this space, in the past, worldwide, we kind of had a centralized system of authority, a centralized system of governance, and there's pros to that, but there's also a lot of cons. We saw the negative things like the housing fall of 2008, the pandemic, the compromise of elections. So when you have a centralized authority, you can have corruption.
Exactly.
But the blockchain, you're saying it's decentralized, and so there's lots of, is this correct? Little computers that are spread out all around the world, and they're essentially validating. Ooh,
and that's a computer.
wow.
Essentially, your phone is a computer. And let's get back to the corruption for a second,
Yeah.
right? So, as your audience might be familiar with, in 1920, really the history of money, just real quick. So, in 1900, actually, March 14, 1900, Congress passed the Gold Standard Act, making gold the standard for the U.S.
Yep.
Then, fast forward to post World War II, the Bretton Woods Conference from 1946 to 1971, where we still had a gold standard. However, international balances were handled in the US dollar. And that was almost the catalyst towards, August 15, 1971, which will forever be looked at as the day that the gold standard was removed. So what were the ramifications of that? Well, since 1971, you mentioned the housing market crash. In the last 15 years, there has been a financial crisis in almost every single continent. Starting with 1972, only a year later, the Mexican debt crisis, in which U.S. banks had to pump $29 billion into Mexico, and it really led to 10 years later. The debt rose to $327 billion, leading to the central bank and the IMF having to intervene. And as you know, the Mexican peso, I think is the currency, is almost worthless. Fast forward to 1997, Asia, the Thai baht, Indonesian rupee, Filipino peso, Malaysian ringgit, and the South Korean won all at least negative 34% of value were devalued in those currencies. And Thailand was the first one where their currency was devalued to the US dollar, requiring billions of dollars in IMF bailout, financial deregulation, foreign debt skyrocketing, and GDP going like this. And then just a side note, I mean, even the show Squid Games, if you're familiar with it,
Mm.
if you look at the comparison of money, right? 1.6 billion won, I think was the number in Squid Game. Sorry if I'm ruining it for
No,
anybody.
no, you're good. Yeah.
And that number is only like 4 million US dollars. So it just goes to show you that all of these currencies, and we'll keep going to Europe, or sorry, to Africa in 2001, where 18 African nations had to qualify for debt relief. And then obviously the 2008 housing market crash that
Sure.
you alluded to caused African goods to all drop in value. Everything from oil, platinum, nickel, gold, and copper, where $500 billion were lost in export earnings. And it's funny because what I never knew about Africa, and I found out last year in our research,
Yep.
was that in Africa, almost every single one of the nations do not transact with one another. I mean, it's crazy to think that all of these countries are your neighbors and they're not even transacting.
They're all
They're having to utilize, Switzerland
interesting.
or the US. So what crypto and blockchain is enabling them to do is to say, you know what? No, we are going to put our foot down and we're not going to stand for that.
So it's one currency essentially.
Well, we'll get to that because there is a little bit more crises that happen.
Okay.
2008, like you mentioned, it caused a $500 billion in bailouts and $250 billion injected into the economy. Here's the funny thing about that. That caused a massive domino effect in Europe because in Europe, as you might know, they are based on the euro, where with the exception of Britain, they all have one currency. So if one nation falters, they all have to almost, back each other up. It's almost like, I don't know if you're familiar, if you're a sports fan, but it's almost like a football team.
Oh, yeah.
Where in a football team, all 11 players are integral to one another.
Yes.
You saw this in the Super Bowl last year. Patrick Mahomes is a great player, but without an offensive line, he can't do anything.
There you go.
So it's the same thing with, in an economic perspective, which is what happened to the European debt crisis, which, they created the euro in 1999. It started circulating in 2002. And then because of the 2008 collapse, so many of the nations who were not financially responsible had to rely on nations like Austria and other fiscally responsible nations to almost bail them out. Where Greece, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, and Spain all were teetering on the edge of financial collapse.
All because the U.S. pumped in $250 billion.
Exactly. Even bigger than that, all because the U.S. went off the gold standard. So now we have a debt standard, right? So the last 50 years, since, obviously the birth of Bitcoin, you've had a debt standard. I mean, look at, Venezuela, for example, where their inflation completely destroyed their country. Mm-hmm. You're looking at Turkey right now, where they have negative 36% inflation. Wow. And then, and the thing is the IMF, because you mentioned, the benefits and the negatives of having a centralized system.
Yes.
So you have, the IMF, who almost serves as, that buffer system, right? Where, worst case scenario, we'll bail you out. Mm-hmm. So what that does is that when you look at global economies and GDPs of economies, why is it that every nation is in debt to one another, right? It's if the IMF being the backbone is still based in debt, then we don't have anything, right? So and then again, Venezuela, Argentina. I mean, just so many countries.
Isn't our own dollar worth 4% of like what it was back in the 1900s?
100%. I'm gonna look that up right now.
Yeah, I think it's like 96% devalued.
Yes. It's only worth. I mean, talk about the euro, right? It's worth 0.89 of the euro. Wow. So we've devalued our currency to the point where it's less than the euro.
And see, I'm almost 45. Well, I am 45 now. I didn't realize how money worked until the last 12 months. I know that sounds crazy, but I think there's a lot of our listeners who are saying, Why is inflation going up? All these people are greedy. It has nothing to do with
Nothing to do with it.
the farmer, the grocery store. It has to do with if you have, let's just say, $250 billion and it's split up around a country, and you add 250 more when it's not backed by gold, you've basically robbed half the value from all of your people. But
Exactly.
it's allowed because of inflation.
And the funny thing is that I mean, right here, hyperinflation refers to a rapid and unrestrained price increase in an economy, typically rates exceeding 50% over its value.
Yeah.
According to the Federal Reserve, currency in circulation, a direct measure of demand for Federal Reserve notes, increased by 5.1 billion notes, or $226.3 billion between June 2019 and June 2020. In contrast, during the same period the previous year, currency in circulation increased 1.3 billion notes, or $75.8 billion. And I know that sounds like a lot for your listeners, but just to put that, as clearly as possible, we have printed 22% of our circulating US dollar. And if you look at history, and the reason why I went through all of those examples is because, as you know, history isn't, if you don't learn history, you are destined to repeat it.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
And the thing is that all of these smaller nations, they understand that. That is why they're adopting to Bitcoin. Places like Nigeria, Afghanistan, South Korea, India, all are looking into, Bitcoin. And even Dubai, who was the first nation, I think, last year to have a blockchain system for their economy, is probably right now the richest nation in the world. If not, will be in the next 5 years. And you brought up an excellent point about how you did not understand economy or economics in the last 12 months. And you know why that is? It's because the only thing that we are taught is Keynesian economics.
What's that?
And, Keynesian economics is an economic phenomenon that, in order to stabilize an economy, you have to consume more. So if there is a depression, a government needs to spend more in order to stabilize that economy. And that is why the American system is based off of debt. It's easier for, a black man in this country, or anyone in this country for that matter at this point, to get a credit card than it is to get a bank loan, to start a business, because that is good debt, right? They don't teach you about good debt. They teach you about put yourself into debt, because we're all based on debt, right?
Wow.
And the funny thing is when you talk about Bitcoin, right, and you look at its growth, you just mentioned that the dollar's value has actually gone down like this. And it's funny, I don't know if your audience or anyone is on Twitter, but one thing I notice on Twitter is a consistent theme of Bitcoin crash, Bitcoin crash.
Bitcoin's gonna die, and China outlawed Bitcoin, and blah blah blah. Yeah.
And the funny thing is when you look at its growth, right? 2013, it began trading at 1328. 2015, its price rose to 315.21. 2016, it rose to $900. That's almost 3 times its value in 1 year. 2017, it had a massive rise where December 15, 2017, it had its all-time high of $19,345.49. Then it ended the year at $6,635.84. So again, and before I get to 2020 and 21, exactly. The problem is people see this, but what they don't understand is when you look back, South Korea, Nigeria, all these countries whose value is poop, whose country, whose currency is valued in nothing almost. It's less than the dollar, and they see it as, well, okay, Bitcoin did drop to 6,000, but that's still a hedge against inflation better than than it was. And again, 2020, its ending price was 29,000. So everyone was saying, oh, Bitcoin crashed last year because it was at 40K and then dropped to 29. But when you look at something and you take a perspective out of it and look at it holistically, its value was $6,635. Now it's 29,000. That is almost, what is that? It's almost a 5 times increase in value. So when you look at it from that and then now, Bitcoin's price the December 15th $48,447, and I think its closing price was like 49,000.
Mm-hmm.
So roughly,
Yeah.
actually, I
And
think
part
I
of the
have it.
reason why it fluctuates so much is because there's a limited supply,
Yep.
and therefore the whole what do you call that? The cap is so low right now compared to other currencies that if somebody sells a bunch, it affects it a lot, unlike other currencies. So let's talk about this. Why, my audience maybe has heard the term Bitcoin maximalist. You and I chatted before we started about that, but you tend to be a Bitcoin maximalist, which means you're basically saying that Bitcoin, again, even though this podcast has nothing to do with investing, I'm not giving anyone
Yeah,
advice,
no investing advice.
no investing advice, but you're saying that you personally believe that Bitcoin is superior to other forms of cryptocurrency. Why would you say that?
So, that's an interesting question. And it's funny because last year I was 100% with Ethereum.
Okay.
I was an Ethereum developer. I mean, I was creating NFTs, blockchain development, the whole nine. Really, what it was when I started to look back and peel back the onion. First of all, I started to understand things like NFTs and the fact that really NFTs were never pushed at all. Yet NFTs, I mean, NFTs for utility were never showcased at all. And the only utility for NFTs I can think of was here's my NFT, and this is an ape, and this is gonna be my picture now, and I'm gonna sell it for $6.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was the fact that I started to look at all of these cryptocurrencies, things like Dogecoin, right? And you saw everyone was lauding Dogecoin, and my friend, again, not investing advice at all, but my friend is a trader, and he told me that in January of last year, when everyone was going crazy about Dogecoin in June, Doge-Fi was worth 2 pennies. Doge-Fi now is worth like $6 or $7.
Wow.
Nobody talked about Doge-Fi at all. Nobody even knew what Doge-Fi was. Yet Dogecoin was lauded as the savior, the new dollar, blah blah blah, right? So when you look at that, you haven't really seen any utility. Then when you look at security, because when you think about a blockchain project and cryptocurrency, it's the amalgamation of three elements: security, scalability, and trust, right? So how do you have all three of those? So when you look at things like Ethereum, and you saw in 2017 when the DAO hack happened, and if your audience is not familiar, basically what happened was somebody had hacked into their DAO. What Ethereum did was they had a fork where they basically essentially said that all transactions prior to this did not happen, and they gave people their money back. Some people would say, oh, that's a good thing. But again, that defeats the purpose of a blockchain, because a blockchain is supposed to be not controlled by any single entity. Finally, back to this, right? So we want to decentralize healthcare with the blockchain.
Oh, this is good. So you're taking blockchain and you're putting it into healthcare.
Exactly. And we understand that can't work for Ethereum. My business partner was like, first of all, he said, we're only going to do proof of work chains, because if we have a proof of stake system, I mean, as you might know, there's a lot of cancer, treatments out there that are practiced outside of the US that nobody knows about. Things like the Gerson therapy, Dr. Sebi diet. All of this stuff is practiced outside of the US, but nobody in the US knows about it. You have to almost go to a third world country in order to get real, healthcare for some of these diseases. So when you look at that and you see what they're trying to do to Bitcoin, because one thing you're noticing about the price of Bitcoin is there's things called whales. And what whales do is they, normally they're in China, and they buy up a bunch of Bitcoin and they sell it all off, and it causes a massive panic where they can sell off and then buy more at a cheaper price. And these people are billionaires. So we knew that we could not have that for our project, because our project is already, sketchy in itself, trying to decentralize healthcare, which is something that has not been done ever. So when we looked at that, we said, okay, so now we only have Cardano and Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So we started looking at Cardano, but the problem that we didn't like about Cardano was that it operated in the playground and it had too many elements that were similar to Ethereum. We wanted something that was strictly proof of work. And then what we found was that it aligned with us to partner with Bitcoin projects and Bitcoin nations, because if you look, global adoption, right? Vietnam, India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Kenya, and Ukraine, according to 2021, are the top global adopters of Bitcoin. And one thing that those all have in common is that Vietnam, Japan, Nigeria are all extremely passionate about alternative medicine.
Okay.
These countries value alternative medicine. They value true healthcare. They value all of those things. So it was almost a perfect alignment. And then finally, to answer your question about Bitcoin versus Ethereum, you've seen Bitcoin already have scalability with the fact that officially, granted, like I said, there's unofficial nations that have adopted it as its currency, but one nation has officially adopted it as its currency, and that is El Salvador.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that in 12 years or less than 12 years, Bitcoin has already shown utility in itself. And it's funny because when all these coins were created, they all had this idea that we were going to be the Bitcoin killer, and we're going to be the utility to Bitcoin, and utility to Bitcoin, utility. Well, at the end of the day, the utility only worked for centralized systems. And I really want to recommend a book to your audience. It's called The Bitcoin Standard.
Yes.
By Saifedean. I apologize if I'm boofing his name. Amos. And in that book, by the way, all these metrics I'm noticing are from the book. And I just want to read a couple quotes from that.
Yeah, go for it. Bitcoin Standard. I'm going to check on my smartphone and see if I read that one yet.
So one of those quotes from the book was that, the Keynesian ideology of consumption, instant gratification, and spending is not wise for an economy. Here's another one. Money's soundness is its resistance to control by a sovereign. So let's unpack that statement, right? So when you talk about Bitcoin versus some of these other cryptocurrencies.
Hey, look at that. Look at that. Boom.
Perfect, everybody. Yes. Yes.
Cool.
It's also on YouTube. If you guys don't want to buy it, there's an audio book on YouTube.
Sweet.
But that statement, money's soundness is its resistance to control by a sovereign. So money is supposed to be sound in the sense that it cannot be controlled by a sovereign. And you see guys like Peter Schiff and other individuals that say, we need to go back to the gold standard. Well, the problem with the gold standard is it is too easily controlled by a sovereign.
Yeah. For example, a few decades ago, the government says, turn in all your gold, and it was required. And then they said, okay, it was at this level. Now we're going to reduce the value or raise the value, and so they basically jacked with the whole economy.
Exactly. And then you see, back to cryptocurrencies, Ethereum, Cardano, they all have a central entity. Vitalik Buterin, Charles Hoskinson, all of these, they have a central figure.
So it's almost like they're pseudo decentralized, but really there's a central authority. Whereas Satoshi Nakamoto, the founder of Bitcoin, you're saying is truly decentralized because it's scarce.
Yes, it's scarce. It's a hedge against inflation. And its utility is massive. See, when people want to talk about utility, right? As a former blockchain developer, I know all about it, right? When I first got into blockchain, I was always like, okay, what's the utility? What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
And it's funny because its utility as a decentralized entity, as far as Ethereum, has yet to come about. Right? You've seen centralized systems like IBM blockchain, like AWS, adopt EVMs. And EVMs, if you're not familiar with it, is basically an Ethereum virtual network where you can have a centralized blockchain that works with the Ethereum blockchain. So to your point, it already in itself shows that it is pseudo decentralized.
Yeah.
The next quote, and you mentioned, the payback of gold. So the Great Depression was because of fleeing the gold standard post World War One, government control, and socialization of the economy.
Hmm.
So if you talk, and granted, neither one of us are old enough to remember what happened during the Great Depression, but history tells us what was the term in the 20s prior to 1929. What was that term for the 20s? Right, it was the Roaring 20s. It was mass consumption. It was the alcohol,
Yeah. Prohibition and all that. Yeah.
and it was parties and all of that stuff, where it was mass spending,
Mm.
right? So then 1929, bam, Great Depression happened.
Mm.
And I believe personally, because some would say that we got out of the Great Depression via the New Deal. I believe that World War II is really what got us out of the Great Depression, and really what fast forward the United States into this ideology of, everyone's familiar with this term, the military industrial complex.
Yes.
Where World War One, we were in World War One, we were in World War Two, then we did Vietnam, Korean War. We really were in any kind of war that we possibly could. And what did that do? Well, that strengthened the U.S. economy. But at the same time, even before we entered World War II in 1939, well, we were still producing a lot of military equipment. So we were selling all this stuff to our allies before we ever entered the war.
Wow.
So
let's make this. This is fascinating. I didn't know you were such a historian and researcher. I love it. I can tell it's your passion. So let's make it super practical for people. Okay.
yes,
So
sir.
I'm gonna shoot some stuff at you. I'll basically say the fact that your house was at 200,000 five years ago, and now it's at 350,000. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, sweet. My house is so much worth more. That's a lie.
That's a lie.
That it basically says, no, we just pump the economy with paper money. So now you need more paper. And that bottle that you bought for $2 is now going to cost you $5. And so really it's a way of stealing. It's a way of that the government can steal from the people.
Exactly.
And that's what's interesting, Sam, because when I got into this stuff at first, I thought, oh, this is interesting. It's just about currency. But really it's about philosophy. It's about anthropology, like sociology. It's blockchain is not just this little thing that says, oh, it affects what's in your wallet.
Yeah.
It actually affects how you live, breathe, operate, freedom. It's tied to freedom. So what do you want people to do by listening to this? Do you say that they should get a digital wallet? Should they step their foot into Bitcoin? What's your perfect world?
Well, before I go into that, I do want to add one point to what you just said, right? So the price of their house went up from 200,000 to 350. But the one thing that did not go up and really has not gone up at all is wages, right?
Ooh.
Wages that you were paid in the 1950s and 60s comparatively to now have gone down. Right. So the price of everything has gone up, but the wages have actually gone back this way. So to that point, I would say really get in the space. Get in the space.
Read some of the books that you mentioned.
Read some of the books. Bitcoin Standard.
Yeah.
If Bitcoin in Black America is another good one. I actually have a list. I'm gonna.
Oh yeah. I would appreciate you just reading a few of those. Be great.
Yep. And the next point is, just get in the space and learn about this stuff. Don't just read one article and say that you're a master on this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I am not even. I mean, I get in some of these Twitter spaces with some of these Bitcoiners, and I am just completely lost.
Oh, yeah.
mining and
Yeah.
liquidity pools and all of this stuff. I mean, it is very, very deep.
So it's listen. My audience should listen, but they shouldn't say. Because what's interesting about this space too, I started to follow some people on Instagram and Twitter, and then all of a sudden they're in my inbox saying, "Hey, are you into crypto? Have you thought about investing?" And there's a lot of scams going on.
Yep.
So listen, read the books, but don't just take action and start throwing your money a bunch of places. Do you agree?
Exactly. Some of these books, Mastering Bitcoin, Bullish Case for Bitcoin, Layer of Money, The Price of Tomorrow. I think that's actually a movie. And Bitcoin in Black America are some of the good ones for me. But 100%, because too many. The thing about cryptocurrency and blockchain, especially in its infancy, is that because decentralized, there is a lot of scams out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, as much as I would love to say everyone should buy Bitcoin, and I think that they should, and I understand the point, Ethereum or, Cardano or some of these other coins are a lot cheaper. I understand that. But if you just put $10 in Bitcoin, $5 in Bitcoin, and read those books and really start to understand this stuff. And here's another thing for all the young people out there, 20s, 19, 18, even start trying to decide what they want to be.
Yeah.
Like you just said, it's freedom. Too many times people run this rat race. I mean, my father's 65 years old. He is, he really wants his pension. I don't even know if it's going to be there for him to have it.
Wow.
And I don't know how to break it to him that he's not going to get it.
Wow.
Because a lot of older people are stuck in their ways, and they are, Bitcoin's a scam, Bitcoin's this.
Yeah.
What people need to understand.
Have you seen that Matt Damon commercial?
Oh, the crypto.com?
Yeah. So I was on Twitter yesterday. By the way, I love the commercial. I get fired up when I see it. I'm like, wow, this is inspirational. But there were so many people that said, scam, 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 sell out. In other words, they're not even willing to explore, is this possible? And that's what I think you're passionate about and I'm passionate about. We're not saying jump in the deep pool and, put your life savings in crypto. We're saying be willing to just drop your bias that it's a scam and do your homework. Would you agree?
Yes, do your homework. That is the biggest element of all of this, is that too many times people want, MSNBC or CNN or somebody to tell them what to do for them. See, we are not going to tell you what to do. We're not going to say buy this coin or do this. No. We are telling you, here are the resources. Everything I've been reading off of for you guys today is all my own research from these books, from learning this stuff. I didn't go full-time crypto, until about a year into the space. It took time.
I'm not there yet.
Exactly.
Just to be real, because I feel like I'm still learning, and I'm there mentally, but I'm going slow.
Well, you have more to lose as well than I do.
Yeah.
Me being 25 years old, college graduate, I don't have much to lose. My life savings are a lot smaller than your life savings.
Sure.
So if you're young, if you're a young person, I would say you are more, if you have nothing to lose, you're single, you're 19 years old, you don't know what you want to do with your life. You maybe you didn't even go to college. Those kind of people, those are the people I'm saying really get into space, learn blockchain, learn development, because you can go from having no future to making six figures. You can, learn crypto, learn Bitcoin, learn, Bitcoin trading or learn, Bitcoin projects and all of this stuff, so that there's stuff that you can do. So that when you are Kary's age, you are, a millionaire, because you played the game smart. Because I understand for people that are in their 40s and have families and, had bills, it is definitely a lot to, and again, when you have the media who is, especially in the United States, has a smear campaign against Bitcoin, I totally understand the trepidation, the trepidation behind it. But if you just do your own research and really start to learn this stuff
Yeah.
and learn people who have, gone, look at, Da Vinci J15, for example, look at some of these kids who invested in Bitcoin and are now millionaires because of Bitcoin. I
Mm.
mean, she, here's 10 years ago, if
Yeah.
somebody told you that you could make $1 million by having a webcam and having an OnlyFans, or you could make $1 million by playing a video game and talking about it on Twitch, people would probably call you, a fool. They say, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Right? But now in 2021, there is a lot of millionaires out there from things like OnlyFans, Twitch, and some of these other online mediums. So 10 years from now, granted, 2020, the number one skill to have is blockchain development.
Mm.
2021, it's probably the same thing. 2022, it's more towards Bitcoin, but at the same time, they still need blockchain developers. And you don't need a college degree to become a blockchain developer.
I love
So
it.
that would be what I would say for the audience is really get in the space.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. Cryptocurrency and blockchain, here's the fear that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
It is not going to wipe away everyone's job.
Mm.
Blockchain still needs marketers, still needs salespeople, it still needs lawyers, it still needs all of these people. It's just it gives these people a lack of an intermediary. For example, if you're a real estate agent,
Yep.
right, and you operate solely on the blockchain, you can have it where you might, again, in 10 years, if you don't think to do that, then you might lose your job
Yep.
because people will say, well, why do I need a real estate agent or Zillow or anything where I can just be peer to peer with the blockchain?
Yep.
But if you know how to be an early adopter now, when
Yep.
people are still poo pooing on it,
Right.
there are so many waves that you can make.
Yep.
One of the greatest quotes I've ever heard is by Jeff Bezos. And he said, when you're an early adopter, you get a 2-year head start.
Mm.
So in 2020, my business partner and I got on the Bitcoin and really started running with it. Now it's 2022, and you're seeing nations everywhere get on it. We had that 2-year head start. We
Yep.
could really build that foundation, find out what we want to do, so that as Bitcoin starts to hit its takeoff, we know what we want to do.
And
See,
even today, meaning if my audience is hearing this today, they're not too late.
not at all. Not at all. You are not too late at all, because Bitcoin, first of all, Bitcoin will eventually hit $1 million, $10 million, $100 million. So if you put $100 in Bitcoin, don't even touch it. $10 in Bitcoin, don't even touch it. Imagine what it's going to be for your children. Or imagine what it's going to be in 10 years.
Very little risk, but
Yeah, there's no risk.
Yeah.
There is very little risk. And again, when you look at it holistically, its value has gone, I went over I'm going to go over it one more time, but the value of it has, it went from, one second, I think it was started at 300, then it went to 900, then it went to 900. Then in 2017, it went to 19,345, 49. 2019, it went to 6,635. Then 2020 was at 29,000. So what you're seeing is 4 times, 3 times, 5 times increase of its value. So if you just look at the numbers, let me look up what Bitcoin's valued at right now. I think it's what, valued at $46,119 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that, by the time this time next year, it could be valued at 84,000. And people might scream,
or 25, but it's, you look at the trajectory, it keeps going up.
Exactly. Yeah. And even if it is valued at 25, its value will go up because it's shown over the years that because of its scarcity, its value's gone up. And here's another key element. In 2024, there will be a halving process.
Yes.
Where its value will be cut even more, because in order for miners to mine it, they get a block reward. The block reward will be cut in half, so they will mine it even less. So by 2024, its scarcity will go up even more. It will be less scarce than gold. Its stock to flow value will be less than gold. And when you look at the value of gold, which everyone screams about, gold right now I think is it's valued at about, let me see, 1 second,
No problem.
goldprice.org. It's valued at $1,814.59. So you have this asset that's $1,000, a 49th almost, or 48th, or 46, something
Sure,
around
sure.
there, valued of what Bitcoin is,
Hmm.
right? So again, you have to look at things holistically. And finally, is when you look at the price in comparison to other nations and
Mhm.
other nations' adoption of the currency. See, in the US, the only way that you can really buy things with Bitcoin is if you have a crypto.com card, right? And that's another very small thing that you could do. Look up crypto. I'm not telling you to buy it. I'm not telling you to do anything,
Sure.
but look up crypto.com.
In other
Look.
words, they've made it easier to use crypto instead of saying, "Oh, I need a MetaMask wallet and all this complexity."
Exactly. And here's the funny thing, though, about crypto.com. Crypto.com is still buying it with a Visa. So we're not
Yes.
there yet. Versus El Salvador, Nigeria,
Mm.
you are buying things strictly with Bitcoin. They have wallets where you're buying things with sats, with things called Satoshi. And I don't want to go too deep into the
Sure.
technicality of that, but basically what it is, it's a proverbial penny almost. Or it's like if you could take the dollar and make it more transactable.
Right.
Because as most of the time,
Micro purchases.
yeah, because most people are not gonna have a full Bitcoin,
No, no.
but at the same
But
time,
that's even a good question. I want people to realize that Sam's not saying you need to go spend $46,000. You could spend $10 and you get 0.0001 of Bitcoin. Like you can have.
exactly.
So let's share this as we wrap
It's
it
a
up.
mechanism.
Yeah. I want people to realize that this is much bigger than crypto. For example, you talked about the unbanked, the people that haven't historically been able to even have a bank or a loan, and Bitcoin allows for that. But here's something else.
I want to
Yeah,
touch on that
yeah.
real quick with a quick story.
Mhm.
So I'm blessed enough where I grew up middle class. My business partner grew up in Flint, Michigan. Well, fast forward to last year when we tried to get a bank loan. Well, he had a poor credit score. So we were not able to get that bank loan. So that's a perfect example with Bitcoin and with cryptocurrency. They don't care who you are, what you look like. You will be able to have loans for your Bitcoin.
Mm.
And I look into Celsius wallet, in order to do that,
Okay.
everybody.
Yeah.
And here's another point about Celsius. With the banks, your money is actually losing value in a bank.
It's like
With
what
Celsius,
Michael Saylor says, it's like the ice on the desk that keeps melting.
I like that quote.
Yeah.
The Celsius wallet, you get about 6%, roughly 5-6% on your Bitcoin.
Wow.
So I actually make money on my crypto. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off because
No. I like what you're saying.
you had
So
a great point.
I'm a person of faith, and some of our community is. Even certain countries where you want to give money to missionaries, if you choose to use the fiat currency, which is, backed by the government decree, that dollar you give somebody, the missionary might only end up getting a quarter, because all along the way, people are pulling percentages and percentages and percentages. Bitcoin, like you said, goes across all borders, and it actually gets to the destination in minutes. Instead of like today, if I wire money, sometimes it takes 3 days to get to somebody.
Exactly. And to your point about faith, with a centralized system, and I'm not saying this could happen, but with a centralized Orwellian system, and as everyone knows, you're seeing signs of Orwellian in the United States.
Hmm.
Just the case. I don't
Data,
need to go in depth on
data
that, but
privacy, all that stuff. Yeah.
and there could be a situation in which you are barred to practice your faith. I
Mm.
mean, right now you're seeing, where the Eighth or Ninth Amendment enables you to practice medical freedom. Well, with the
Mm.
vaccine, you don't have the medical freedom. So
Yeah.
if they came after that, what's to say they won't come after your faith? With blockchain, with Bitcoin, you have that freedom where churches can now be able to really fund their system in Bitcoin.
Wow,
And,
this is
and
deep stuff, man.
because again, it's about freedom. Freedom is the biggest element of all of this. It isn't about money. It's not about get rich quick. It's about freedom. It's about the fact that there are so many people in this country and all around the world who are not free, who work 40 years and live 5 to 10, just to survive with their retirement, who don't live a great life, where people, who are Christian, have all this faith in a system, or the churches have this faith in a system where the system can turn back around and say, no, 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 you can't do X, Y, and Z.
Mm,
Bitcoin gives you that opportunity. See, again, because Bitcoin is verifiable, the ability for you to do crimes with Bitcoin is very, very low.
mm.
So that misnomer that people have that,
Right. All
you know,
criminals are using
yeah,
Bitcoin, and yeah.
there's actually more crime done via the dollar,
Sure.
throughout the last 100 years. So freedom is the biggest element of all of this.
Well,
As a
that's
man
good.
of
That's
faith,
good. I like that, Sam. Well, listen, as we wrap up today, let's say people want to follow you on Twitter or online, where can people find you?
so my Twitter name is the Merlin Group. I'm pulling it up right
Yeah.
now. It's
The
actually no, it's at SJ Salgado 4899. That's SJ. I'm gonna put that in the chat.
yeah,
SJ Salgado 4899. And then I'm also gonna put my business partner in there as well.
sure.
Um,
Fantastic. And
yeah, his
and oh
name
yeah,
is,
I see it. I see it. SJ and then ALGADO 4899.
and then
And
this is my business partner. His name is Michael Phillips. It's at Mike J Phil.
Mike J. Phil. Yeah. And you guys are passionate about healthcare related to blockchain.
Yes, sir. Just to
Wow.
touch on that real quick,
Yeah.
really what we want to do is we want to create a system all in Bitcoin in which, number one, people are not barred to, let's say they find a rare herb that can cure, the cyst, right? They're not barred to have to do a $200 million study in order for that to be propagated. With the
Mm,
current traditional medical system, you have to have a $200 million study in order for anything to be looked at. That's why most alternative medicines are never, prescribed by the FDA, because most of these systems they can't afford it. So the first element is that we will create that platform where all in Bitcoin via nodes and via pretty much just nodes. We will have it where anyone from all around the world will be able to sell any plant or herb that they want. The
interesting.
second element is that because we believe in what's deemed alternative medicine, which has really only been deemed that for the last 100 years.
Mm,
The Native Americans were practicing this medicine. If you look at healthcare statistics, countries that practice things like Ayurveda and acupuncture, preventative therapies, EDTA chelation,
mm.
uh, you know, clinical clinical
Nutrition.
nutrition, chiropractic, fasting, osteopathy, immune system stimulation, and other alternative treatments, they've actually shown that some of these nations are the healthiest nations in the world.
Mm,
All the nations that are in the Ayurveda Association section of the U.S. are all top 30 healthiest nation in the world, but the U.S. is actually bottom 30, healthiest nation in the world. 1 in 4 people in the U.S. have heart disease.
mm.
Um, you know, people, billions of people have cancer every single day, yet there's no cure for it. There's no talk about a cure for it. So really what we want to do is create that platform where via another blockchain or maybe Bitcoin, we're still figuring it out. We want to have it where even though these treatments are less expensive, we want to make these treatments even cheaper,
Mm.
where people all around the world can afford them even more.
Wow.
So we will have it where it's basically like a uh, like a like a stable coin almost that's backed by Bitcoin
Okay.
that will be circulated. so that people all around the world will be able to have that. So those are the first two elements, and the third is, like I said, the decentralized insurance. Because with alternative medicine in the U.S., they're not picked up by insurance.
Mm.
The funny thing is even when you go to the doctor for anything, I mean, I went to the doctor. I had like something with my ear last year, and I have insurance, and they still charge you a payout.
Sure.
You know, so it's like even with some of this stuff, you're still charged a payout anyway.
Mm.
So really, man, we just want to change the world, and we
Yeah.
put ourselves on being change agents. I think that's in my Twitter bio. And we pride ourselves on being change agents and
Mhm.
people that really want to make a difference. And we believe that doing this is a great way that it will be done.
Sam, thank you for being here today. You blew my mind, man.
Thanks for having me.